Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to look at the importance of taking a good warm-up run within your main runs. Now the key thing with this is performance and reduction of injury. We improve our performance by making sure that we are not burning out our body too early, and we reduce our risk of injury by not stressing our body too early. Now there's loads of reasons we need to do this other than those two things, but those are the big two that we need to think about most of all, and we're going to explore a bit in the video here today. So as we look into your warm-up run, now if you're not doing a pre-run warm-up, doing some mobilization, some drills, some pulse raising, then even more so this becomes important. So when you're looking at going into your run, you want to be looking at a very, very comfortable pace that's physically and cardiovascularly pretty comfortable. Basically, easy run pace is what you want to be looking at. I've seen this in case where people have run their long runs and they've gone out and got, cool, I've got 16, 17 miles on what to do. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go hard because I want to look at that average pace across the session being relative to marathon pace, being 20, 30, 45 seconds, whatever off a marathon pace. But the problem is that you can really burn out very, very quickly. When you're running for several hours, you want to make sure that you're easing into this very, very comfortably. I had a couple of clients last year doing their marathon training who were all about guilty of going out very quick, very hard each time, and then really dying a death in the latter miles. They'd often miss paces towards the end of the run from about mile 12 or 13 onwards, really, really struggling with this and not really enjoying those long runs that much at all. What we then did, I advised them to slow that warm up down to the pace we had agreed and we'd set out the start point, and they would feel much, much better. Forget the average pace because actually it will be quicker if they slow down at the start. Lo and behold, they did exactly that the next couple of weeks, and we saw huge improvements. They slowed by about 15 seconds per mile in those warm ups. The consistency they improved, their average pace improved, and the way they felt improved, building up that confidence and ability, working harder eventually across the session overall with a more comfortable heart rate, muscles working, experiencing more time at marathon pace, and just feeling better. So they came into race day with huge, huge confidence boost and both ran enormous PBs because of it. I'm not saying this is the only reason, but it's a big, big factor for those two people. And it's something I see a lot with friends and with clients as well, that there's a temptation to run hard from the start. Now, the other side of this again is the injury prevention point of view. So when you're going into harder interval runs in particular, or when you're running in the winter when it is very cold, if we don't do a good progressive warm up where we're taking it easy at the start and kind of gradually building into those faster paces, it can really cause the body to go through some issues. We haven't warmed up and prepared those muscles, those tendons, those ligaments. We haven't prepared the neural system to fire those muscles at the speed we need them to. So we're having to work them really, really hard. Now, this opens up the risk of injury really to quite a high level. And we want to manage our risk of injury because ultimately consistency in training is what gives us our best results and improvement. The other side of this as well, it really becomes important when it comes to interval sessions. So running with a group in particular, this really becomes important. So if you're doing a warm with from friends and you're running in a group, you maybe regroup, have a catch up, go for a weed bush, grab a drink, you talk about the session you're going to then do. The tempting thing is to go, cool, great, and go. And you're going to run really hard straight from the get go, having taken 2, 3, 4 minutes or longer, kind of nattering and waiting around. That is not a good idea and there's a recipe for getting injured, especially if the warmth itself has been quite hard because you've got this big peak, it's dropped back to very little, the body's going to immediately go, right, we need to recover and repair and stop, and we're going to down regulate, deregulate things and not be ready to work. And then you're asking it to go to say your 5K or 10K pace or quicker depending on the session you're doing. Now that is definitely a recipe for disaster. So you want to even do some warm-up drills again. So you could do your running warm-up, you could then do some drills, some mobility, some dynamic activity, but to a lower level, and then go into your pace. Alternatively, do a bit more progressive or pyramid type session. You could build up across your warm up to a more kind of comfortable higher end speed towards the end of that, then have your break, re warm up, and then almost kind of go back into it again. Start from just slightly slower than you were running and then build back up to that top end speed across the first repetition, or even take the first repetition a bit easier. Break those grinds in between the big peaks and that kind of level you were in the warm up. Alternatively, you can do some strides. So a couple of 100 meters of slightly quicker running. We're not looking at sprinting. We're looking just to move better, to start opening up that stride, be a little more explosive in our running style and really move a little bit quicker. And again, that pace will depend on what you are doing within that session. If you're running something like 5K pace, like I say, take it easy on the first repetition or the first few 100 meters of that repetition. Something you run like a 10K pace and then your 5K. If you're doing alternating paces, which you might be doing, some kind of cruise interval session or 5K, 10K, 5K, 10K, start with the slower pace. Start with your 10K pace in those intervals. If you're doing cruise intervals, maybe start with marathon pace first and then go to something like 10 mile or half marathon pace. That type of air workaround is a really good way to minimize the risk of injury and actually feel better and more consistent in your runs as well, because we do need the body to change, we need the brain to change to make sure we're working as well as we can. So, whatever you do, take a really good long running warm up, build into over a couple of miles, or say 10 minutes or 15 minutes as you go, depending on the speed you're running, but progressively build into these sessions, whether it be your long runs or your interval sessions or kind of more moderate tempo type sessions as well. Progress into them, build into them, make sure you're ready to work well, and also risk your injury is much lower.